Melbourne's Chinatown is one of my favourite places to grab a bite to eat. Despite the name, there is a plethora of cuisines, from the obvious Chinese to Korean, Japanese, Malaysian, and many more. But even with all these options, my friends and I will never turn down the opportunity to get dumplings from the Empress of China or Shanghai Village, some true institutions of Little Bourke Street. Hey there, my name is Ken and I live in Melbourne, Australia. I've always been interested in history, infrastructure, architecture, and the environment. I'm creating a video library of things that interest me. Thanks for coming along for the ride. Chinatown is located at the eastern end of Little Bourke Street, stretching from Swanston Street eastwards. Historically, Chinatown stretched all the way towards Spring Street, where Tianjin Gardens are located. However, these days, the section between 5th Street and Spring Street doesn't seem to be included. More on this later. Chinatown is characterised by gateway arches at Swanston Street, Russell Street, Exhibition Street, and at the entrance of the Chinese Museum. It also includes lanterns and other stylistic features emblematic of Chinese culture. I was surprised to learn that Melbourne's Chinatown is well known for being the longest continuous ethnic Chinese settlement in the Western world, and the Southern Hemisphere's oldest Chinatown. Chinatown has an interesting and long history. I won't be able to cover everything today, but here is a brief history, starting with the 1850s. Chinatown started in part thanks to the Victorian gold rush of the 1850s, which saw many Chinese immigrants travel to Australia to try their luck in the goldfields, many of them villagers from Hong Kong and southern China. In late 1854, lodging houses first started popping up in Celestial Avenue, which is just opposite the Kmart Centre these days. This was a good location, not far from the dock on the Yarra, which brought many new gold prospectors to the city. By 1855, a burgeoning Chinese community had settled along the majority of Little Bourke Street. Prospectors would stop in at Chinatown to get food, equipment, medicine, and other supplies before starting their journey to the goldfields to look for gold. When the gold rush was ending, people who chose to stay in Australia began returning to metropolitan Melbourne from rural Victoria. They needed places to live, and for Chinese people, settling in the Chinatown area, where there was already a large Chinese settlement, was a popular choice. People expanded on the already thriving Chinatown by opening more organisations and businesses, like furniture stores, wholesale fruit and vegetable dealers, and importers. Chinatown became a hub not only for local Chinese populations, but also rural and overseas visitors. Now let's move to the 1920s to the 1950s. From the late 1920s, Chinatown began seeing the effects of the Great Depression and the White Australia policy. That is, the 1901 Immigration Restriction Act, which restricted non-British immigration into Australia. The reduced immigration saw population and businesses decline across Chinatown, with the surviving businesses being mostly restaurants that drew customers from the broader Melbourne population. While businesses were able to survive, and in the case of some restaurants, thrive, the general Chinatown area had taken a significant hit, with some predicting that the area would be lost to gentrification. This did happen in part, with some Bourke Street department stores expanding to take up the entire block to Little Bourke Street, demolishing Chinatown's smaller buildings between Russell and Swanston Street. It also appears around this time the block between Exhibition Street and Spring Street lost its Chinese businesses and no longer seems to be included in Chinatown. There are no archways or lanterns in this area except at the very top in Tianjin Gardens. It wasn't all bad though, with the invention of the dim sum by William Cheng Wing Young in Chinatown in the 1940s. Now let's look at the 1960s to the 1980s. Inspired by the success of San Francisco's Chinatown, City Councillor David Wang suggested Melbourne Council revitalise Little Bourke Street into an official Chinatown. The revitalisation was agreed to, and in the 1970s, councils started constructing suspended archways along Little Bourke Street. While there was some fear among the Chinese community that the revitalisation would evoke negative stereotypes, the lifting of the White Australia policy in 1975 helped community attitudes change. New funding brought enthusiasm and further revitalisation in 1984 with new permanent archways, the ones we see today at Swanston Street, Russell Street, Exhibition Street and Cohen Place. They also installed themed lighting, paving decorations and established the Chinese Museum in Cohen Place. Now let's talk about the 1990s to the present day. In recent decades, further improvements have been made to Chinatown, including the establishment of Tianjin Gardens in 1999, which symbolises the friendship between Melbourne and Tianjin, China, further refurbishment of the arches in 2000, and a big refurbishment of the Chinese Museum in 2010. Now that you know a bit of history about Chinatown, I wanted to talk about a few places that you can visit. Let's start with the Chinese Museum, which has a lot of information about the establishment of Chinatown and the lives of Chinese immigrants during the Gold Rush, as well as temporary exhibitions. If you do visit the museum, be sure to check out the Fu Lions, 2 marble lions out the front of the Chinese Museum that are said to ward off evil misfortune. Also, in 2011, a statue commemorating Dr. Sun Yat-sen, a founding father of the Republic of China, was erected in the forecourt of the Chinese Museum. I also recommend taking a look at a few buildings, starting with 120 to 122 Little Bourke Street, which was built in 1888. According to the Victorian Heritage Council, it may contain historical archaeological remains associated with the settlement and growth of early Melbourne. The Kuo Min Tan building at 109 Little Bourke Street, which was built in approximately 1903, may also contain archaeological remains. It had half of its facade redesigned by Walter Burley Griffin in 1929, which you can kind of still see some of the features of. The Nam Pon Soon building, which was built in 1861 at 200 to 202 Little Bourke Street, was built for the Nam Pon Soon Society, which was one of the earliest district associations established in Victoria. The building is heritage listed due to being the earliest surviving Chinese community building in Victoria and housing the earliest known surviving Chinese shrine in Australia. The Sum Kum Lee building, which was built in 1887 at 112 to 114 Little Bourke Street, is heritage listed due to its long association with the Chinese community. It also has one of the most elaborate facades in all of Chinatown. While the inside has changed, I recommend going inside and grabbing some of the tastiest and cheapest dumplings in Chinatown. Chinatown has solidified its status as one of Melbourne's best streetscapes, with some amazing places to eat and things to do and see. For me, another reason I love Chinatown is that it feels unimposing. There are no tall buildings towering over you, and the street feels relatively well preserved. I highly recommend visiting. Thanks for watching. If this video interests you, I encourage you to keep exploring the topic. You never know what you might learn. Let me know in the comments if you have any more facts or tidbits. Bye.